everyone, my name is Millie and I'm going to be doing a really fun Christmas workshop with you guys today for Staedtler and Cult Pens. So as I said, my name is Millie and I'm a calligrapher. I've been doing calligraphy for over 8 years now and I've been teaching for over 6. I run a business called Blink Lettering, which is all about colour and beautiful letters. I'm so excited to be doing this workshop today. We are going to be using some really lovely pens from Staedtler, which I'll be talking to you more about in a second. The best part about this video today is that it's for all different levels. So whether you've done calligraphy for a little while or you've never tried it before, there's different projects to suit your skills. By the end of this workshop, I'll show you how to create 3 different Christmas decorations using various lettering and calligraphy techniques. So let's dive in and get started. For this video, I will be using the Staedtler Pigment Art Pens, both the brush tip version and the bullet tip version. Before we dive into the video, I just wanted to share a little bit more about these pens because they are absolutely brilliant. They came out in 2023 and have a huge range of colours, which is super exciting for me because I love my colour. I will mainly be using these pens today for calligraphy, but these are great for all types of artists, whether you like to do illustration, calligraphy, lettering. There's lots of different things you can do with these pens. The reason I love these pens so much is their multi-ink. Now this ink means that these pens can work on a huge variety of surfaces, and that's what we're going to be exploring in today's video. So we will be creating 3 different Christmas decorations. The first one is going to be on wood. Yes, these pens work on wood. The second will be a ceramic star. And finally, we'll be creating a beautiful bauble. This is plastic, but they also do work on glass as well. So as well as being able to use these on a variety of surfaces, they are also waterproof and colour fast. It's what I really look for in a pen whenever I want to create a final piece of work that will last a long time. So perfect for Christmas decorations that you want to get out year on year. So the 2 types of nibs I'll be using today is their medium firm brush pen, which is the one at the bottom, and their bullet tip, which is the one at the top. They also have a softer brush pen that comes in a variety of different grey shades, which is perfect for adding shading and detail. So as I've mentioned already, we are going to be creating 3 different Christmas decorations, and there is a project for different levels of creativity, lettering and calligraphy. So even if you are new to calligraphy, you will still be able to have a go at one of these projects. You'll also find in the description below a link to a downloadable PDF template so you can trace over the letters and get a feel for what it is like to create them. The first decoration we're going to be starting with is a wooden slice. So these pens work really nicely on wood. What you want to ensure is that it is super smooth. Wood that is a little bit rough and has a texture tends to have a grain where ink will bleed through. This is very common with all pens. So the wood slice I have here is super smooth. If you find your wood slice isn't too smooth, another option is to actually paint the surface, and that creates a protective layer against the wood grain. For this wood slice, I have used the Staedtler acrylic paints, which are a lovely complement to these pens. So if you're looking to create something that's more mixed media, then these are perfect. So the beauty of a wood slice is that we can actually sketch out a design first before we go straight in with pen. For this, I'm using a Staedtler Norris School pencil. So we're going to keep this design very simple and we're just going to write the word joy. To create this design, I'm just going to use this pencil ever so lightly. We do not need to press hard here. By sketching out the letters lightly with the pencil, it means that if we make a mistake or we don't like how it looks, then it's easy to rub it out. So there we have our design lightly in pencil. The next task is to fill this in with pen. So this particular project is going to be perfect for any of you who are completely new to calligraphy. We're actually going to create something called faux calligraphy, which is where we add in the thick lines manually after we've created the letters. This means it's possible to use the Staedtler Pigment Art bullet tip, which is a lot easier to control, so great for beginners. So the first thing to do is just to trace over the sketched letters. So I'm just going to carefully draw down and around on these letter shapes. If you're left-handed, you may find it easier to start from the left and go right to avoid any smudging. Although these inks do tend to dry quite quickly, which does make them a really good pen for left-handers. Thanks. So I'm just tracing over each of these letters, and I'm going quite slowly. I don't want to rush this because I don't want to make a mistake. Once you have the pen on this wood, it isn't possible to remove it, although what you could do is paint over it if you make a mistake. If you need to lift up the pen at any point to reposition your hand, that's totally fine as well. So now we have our letters in place, it's time to start adding the thick lines. So in calligraphy, thick lines are when the pen is traveling downwards, and the thin lines are when the pen is going up. So the best way to do this is almost trace over your letters without putting your pen onto the wood and see where the thick and thin lines are. So for example, with this J, I know that this line down here is going to be a thick line because my pen moved downwards to create it. So all I'm going to do is come in and add a thick line onto this side. And then we want to taper it off just as it gets to the curve. We don't want this join to be too harsh. You can either leave it like this or you can fill it in. You could even choose to fill it in with a different colour, but we're just going to keep this design simple for now. Next we have our O, so if we think about this O shape, this line here was down. So I'm just going to come in, and it doesn't matter if these lines end up touching, and you just want to make sure that this thick line is similar thickness to the J. Now on this part of the O here, where it curves and loops around, it does go down. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of thickness, but not too much because we don't want it too heavy at the top. Next we have our Y, and I'm going to add it on to the left side. There is no right or wrong about which side you add the thick or thin line. The reason I've added it on the left side here is because the gap between this stroke and this stroke is already quite tight, so I don't want to make it any tighter. So I'm just slowly filling this in, and you can see that I'm going at a gentle speed again. So let's do the final stroke, which is this one here. So we went down, up, and then down again. And I'm just going to curve that into the bottom so it tapers off. It can be squared off at the top, but where it goes into a curve, we want it to taper nicely. Now we can add a little bit more detail onto these letters. So for this end of the Y, I'm just going to add a small part here, and then the same on the J. I feel like this just adds a little bit of extra personality. So here we have a really simple Christmas decoration. You don't need to be a pro calligrapher to create a decoration like this. All you need is a pencil and a pen and an understanding of where the thick lines go. You'll find a template for this in the downloadable PDF in the link below, which means that you can have a go creating these letters before you dive into doing it directly on wood. The next decoration we're going to be creating is a ceramic star decoration. So as I mentioned at the beginning, what I love about these pens is the multi-ink allows us to write on a variety of materials. So we started with wood and now we're moving on to ceramic. For this project, we will be using a brush pen, so it's going to be a little bit more complex. I'm also going to introduce a blending technique which adds some depth to your calligraphy. Now, just like the wooden decoration, if you're not 100% confident going in with a pen directly on the material, then you can start off with a pencil. Again, this can be easily rubbed out. So for this, we're going to write the words merry and bright. So we've got a few more letters and we're going to be using a brush pen. When I have a phrase with a few words, sometimes it's easier to start with the bottom word and then you can add the top word above, fitting it around the ascenders. So the ascenders in this case are our B, the H and the T. If you're not 100% happy with the design, you can come in and just rub out a little bit. And then go back in with the pencil and add in the strokes that you want. Then we just need to add in the top word, so this is going to be Mary. I'm just going to add in the word and, which will be all uppercase letters. So now we've got our sketch design. You can see I haven't added in the thick and thin lines, and that's because the brush pens we're using automatically do that for us. I am going to have a base colour of yellow here, so to ensure the pencil doesn't show through, I am going to rub this out ever so slightly so I can still see the design, but the pencil doesn't show through as much. So for this, I'm going to start off with the Staedtler Pigment Brush Marker in yellow. And as I've said, we're going to be creating a blended technique for this. So I'm also going to be using the orange colour, and we need to work relatively quickly with this because the ink is fast drying. So when it comes to calligraphy, the trick is just to do one stroke at a time and go really slow. So you can see when it's down, it's thick, and when it's up, it's thin. So we have our letter M, and now I'm going to go in and create the letter E. And you can see I'm going nice and slowly, and then lifting my pen off after each stroke. I've just applied a little bit of pressure at the end here to create that thick stroke at the end. Now before we move on to the other letters, I want to add a tiny bit of blending in here, and this is where we need to work quite quickly. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of orange onto the thick stroke, and then come in with the yellow and just colour over it. So you can see that you do need to work relatively quickly for this because the ink is so fast drying. However, it does create a really lovely effect, which just adds a bit more depth to your letters. You can also see where we're adding extra yellow on top of the yellow already. This just makes it a little bit darker. So you can actually layer these pens to create different effects. When I'm doing blending techniques like this, it's just easier to keep both pens in your hand so you can just easily swap between them. You can see I'm doing a very small amount of orange. It doesn't need to be a lot. And then you can come in with that yellow and just blend it out. I'm only adding the orange to the top thick parts of the letter. And this creates a really nice gradient effect throughout. The reason I'm only adding it to the thick parts is because it's a lot easier to blend on the thick parts than it is on the thinner parts, because you have a little bit more area. If you start blending on the thinner parts, it can start to make them a bit too thick. So adding a blended effect like this to your calligraphy really brings it to life and makes it feel even more professional. So even if you are quite new to calligraphy, you can really level up your letters just by adding in a small effect like this to bring those letters to life. So we're just on the last one, and I've added a bit more orange onto the Y because we've got a long descender here. So we have a little bit more space to play with in terms of blending. So there you can see the first word, merry. Adding that orange at the top has added a lovely depth to these letters. For the and, I'm going to use the bullet tip just because I want each stroke to be exactly the same width. And using the bullet tip means it's a lot easier to control. Again, we're just going very slowly with this, just doing one stroke at a time and lifting your pen off after each stroke. You don't need to follow the pencil lines exactly. It's just important to ensure the letters are all consistent with each other. If you wanted to do these in colour, you can of course use the tip of your brush pen and just ensure you apply no pressure at all. Okay, so let's add in the word bright. Again, we're going to start off nice and slow with this. And when we go down, I'm just adding pressure onto that pen. So you don't need to push too hard with these pens. The best thing to do is hold the pen as I am, so you've got the pen at a 45-degree angle, so you're using the side of the nib rather than pushing down the tip. This not only makes it easier, but it also protects the pen, so it's less likely to fray, especially on a rougher surface like wood or ceramic. I do find these pens are pretty durable even when used on textured surface. So here I can see that pencil line is touching where the Y is. I don't necessarily want that, so I'm just going to change the shape of this H a little bit so it doesn't go all the way up and then over. So you can see the pencil lines as more of a guide rather than an exact template. You'll find when you're adding in the thick lines with your brush pen, they take up a lot more space compared to the pencil lines, so you do need to bear that in mind when drawing your design out. So now we're going to add in some orange again, and this time I'm going to add orange into the bottom so it feels like it's brighter in the center. So I'm just going to go where the thick strokes are again. And we're just going to alternate between the yellow and orange. As I've said already, these inks are pretty fast drying, so I'm not worried about smudging the ink over here with my hand while I'm doing this. So you can already see the difference adding in this gradient effect does to the letters. So there's so much more depth to the merry compared to the bright, and that's what we want to bring into the bright now as well. So I'm just going over each letter very carefully. I want to ensure that the orange and darker bit sits at the bottom of those letters. So if you do go over with the yellow a bit, then just pop back in with the orange. Because the ceramic absorbs the ink quite well compared to some other materials, the blending for this is a little bit trickier compared to if you were doing it on something like paper. So if you wanted to have a go at blending, I'd really recommend doing it on paper initially, just so you can get used to how these pens blend. So I'm just sticking to the bottom of the letter still, but I don't want to pull the orange too far into the thin strokes. If you do need to twist the decoration at any point just to help you with the blending, then you can, of course, as well. You don't always have to keep it in the same position. So we're just on to our final letter here, and I'm going to bring it quite far up for this letter T, just because we've got a lot more to play with in terms of blending. So with these strokes, I'm just pulling down into that orange. It's easier to blend from light to dark than dark to light. And I feel like it just needs a touch of orange here on the G. So that's our final design for this. You can see that we've introduced slightly more complicated calligraphy and a really lovely blending effect. Again, if you want to have a go creating this calligraphy yourself, you'll find a template in the downloadable PDF. So you can have a go creating these letters before you directly do it on a ceramic star. The final project we're going to be creating is a fun, colourful, personalised bauble. Now this is taking the calligraphy side of things up a level, because not only are we working on a curved surface, but we also can't add in pencil first. So we do need to freehand this. Now one issue with a curved surface like this is it tends to roll around, and it's quite hard to hold your pen steady when it has to be up in the air. So for this, I'm going to be using a travel pillow, but you can use any kind of pillow for this. This means I can hold it in place without it rolling around, and I have something to rest my hand on. Now, as I said, we're going to go in freehand with this. If you're not so confident with calligraphy and using a brush pen, you could always start with a bullet tip and then add in the thick and thin lines afterwards. These pens do take a slightly bit longer to dry on plastic, so if you do make a mistake, then you can rub it out if you're quick using a wet cloth. The other option is to use alcohol rub to rub off any design if you're not happy with it. So for this, we're going to create a personalised bauble. I'm going to create the letters in black to make it really stand out, and then we're going to add some lovely colourful circles just to bring it to life a little bit more. So just like any calligraphy, we want to just do one stroke at a time, but it's really important for this, just so we're taking our time and making sure that it sits around the curve. So because this surface is quite smooth, you can press much harder to create a bigger contrast between the thick and thin lines, and it's not going to damage your pens. So you can see that I'm moving the bauble around as I go. And this just ensures that the letters sit straight and they don't curve up and around. You may find that some of the ink isn't sticking on the bauble, and that is just potentially where my fingers have been holding onto the plastic. But it's fine because you can just go in and touch up and nobody will ever know. So you can just see I'm taking my time, and I'm just going to change my hand position because I don't want to smudge those letters there. And if you need to change the angle of your pen just to sit around the curve better, then you can. So now I'm just going to go in and touch up some of these letters just to make sure that the ink is nice and pigmented. I'd recommend doing this straight away when the ink is still wet, as it will be a little bit trickier once the ink has dried. If you want to prevent fingerprints, then you can always wear gloves when creating something like this. We just need to add the dot in. So for the dot, I like to make it just as thick as the letter below. So I've added on the personalisation, and it's really important to do the personalisation first so you know what space you're looking for. When you're working with a glass or plastic bauble in this case, I recommend having the message only on one side. If you were to add letters on this side as well, then they would start to clash and it would make it quite hard to see. So for this next part, I've got rid of the cushion just because it makes it a little bit more easy for me to move the bauble around. And we're just going to add lots of colourful dots to this. I prefer non-traditional colours when it comes to Christmas decorations. So we're going to start off with this lovely pink colour. And I absolutely love the effect that these pens create when using on something like plastic or glass. It's almost like a stained glass effect. So you can see it's actually colouring the glass. And when the light shines through it, it is so pretty. So I'm just going to keep adding lots of dots to this, and I'm making some bigger and some smaller. There's no rhyme or reason to this. You can just do what you want, and it's a great way. You can just do what you want, and it's a great way to add a little bit of colour. So you can see the black really stands out compared to these colours. And that's why I've used it for the letters, to make it nice and easy to read. And then the colours just add this lovely stained glass effect. Now the bonus with this is even if you add colours on the other side of the bauble, it won't detract from the letters and what the message says. When you are doing this, you just want to be very careful that you're not putting your hand on any of the ink while it's still drying. As we are just doing dots, it makes it nice and easy. It doesn't need to be too precise. So here is our last project. Although the curved surface makes it a little bit harder, you can make this as easy or hard as you want. If you're not quite confident doing a whole word, you could always just do a letter, which looks just as nice. You can see that the pens can also be used for extra decoration. So even if you just want to add some stripes or polka dots, like I've done here, you can see it creates a really cool stained glass effect, and it looks so pretty when the light shines through it. So now you have some lovely inspiration for crafty Christmas decor, created using the Staedtler Pigment Art Pens. As you can see, these are really versatile. You can use them on wood, ceramic, and even plastic or glass. You can of course use them on paper as well. So if you want to create something like a greeting card or gift tags, they would be perfect for that as well. So whether you're completely new to calligraphy and lettering, or you're feeling a little bit more confident and brave, there's a project here for everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to go to the description below to see the downloadable template. It's totally free. As you can see, the Staedtler Pigment Art Pens are so versatile, especially on a variety of surfaces. So if you would like to get your hands on some of these lovely pens, then please head over to the Cult Pens website, where you can view the huge selection they have on offer. If you create any Christmas decorations based on this video, we would absolutely love to see it. So if you do share on Instagram, please tag Blink Lettering, Cult Pens and Staedtler UK. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!